Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Empowered to Live, the place where faith meets purpose and purpose feels freedom. I'm your host, Andrea Rose Butler, and we are here today with part two of our series, Walking in Purpose. And today we're going to be talking about something that quietly keeps a lot of us stuck. And I know for one, I'll raise my hand that is something that I have been working on, and some days I see myself slipping back into that mode, and that is perfectionism. And perfectionism, sometimes it quietly shows up. It's not real loud. And sometimes we're not even aware that we are being held back by perfectionism because, it says, well, I need more time. I'm not quite ready. It's not perfect. I need the right equipment. I need the right this. I don't have enough money. I know I've got to look the part, and so we do different things that, that that in the guise of saying that we're not quite ready, but we're trying to get things perfect. And I shared with y'all before, when before I started this podcast, that was me. I was on the I need to get it perfect. I needed the right title. I needed to make sure I had the right equipment. I just wasn't ready. Maybe I need guests. I need to do this. I need to do all this other stuff. I need to get it together. And so, I don't have the right backgrounds. And as you guys have been rolling with me for the past 2 years, know that there are times that, especially when we were traveling, I was in the car. It was dark and I had the overhead lights on, and we went live. And so, so when you're looking, that's when I was doing Facebook Live only. We've grown up a little bit now, and I've got StreamYard. And StreamYard allows me sometimes to pre-record, which at the time I didn't really think about it. It's like I knew about StreamYard, but I wasn't really using StreamYard. And now that I am, it's been such a blessing to me. But it was growth. Again, things weren't perfect. I was, let me go live on Facebook. That was my thought. That was the process. Just do it. And I think a lot of times when we get stuck in perfectionism, we're like, okay, I need to have all the parts together. And then we miss out on what God has for us because we miss the mark of, walking in obedience. And so while we are trying to become perfect, we delay obedience. God telling us, do this. And we're like, but you see, I need all of these things in order for me to do that. And he was just like, no, you need to take that step first, and then we'll get it together. Faithful steps. I was harking back to, I don't remember her name, but she had a book out way back in the day, and she was talking about that God gives you enough light for the step that you're on. And so he'll illuminate you as you're walking. He's said his word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our pathway. So as we are being obedient and as we are walking, he's illuminating our obedience. He's not going to illuminate disobedience and the plans that we have. He's going to illuminate the plan he has for you, not the plan you have for yourself. And that's something that I've been learning, and I tell you all the time, I come in here and I'm put it all out there. So disappointments, distractions, my imperfections, they are for you to help you recognize that God will and can use you even when you don't have your stuff all together and you think you need to be together and everything needs to be perfect. It doesn't. It doesn't. And our scripture for today is coming from Luke 16:10, and he says, "What whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with much." And so when we are faithful over the little, he can trust us with the much. When you're faithful over, and God can trust you to take those faithful steps, that baby step. I keep hearing, I don't remember the movie it's from, but every time I say that, I hear that saying in my head, baby steps get on the bus. And sometimes we have to take baby steps and make our way there. We have to talk ourselves into, sometimes we have to be like David, and we have to encourage ourselves in the Lord, and we have to encourage ourselves to make that steps. We have to be our own cheerleader, our own motivator, to say, if I want something better, I have to do something different. And so we have to let go of the things that's holding us back. And a lot of times that is perfectionism. We're saying, you know what, I just want things perfect. God didn't ask you to be perfect. He did not. He asked you to be faithful and he asked you to be obedient. Those two things. Everything else is just us, because we get stuck. And perfectionism hides in fear. It's rooted in fear. When we want things and because we don't want to fail, we don't want to look bad in front of the folks. And so we procrastinate, which is also rooted also in that perfectionism, but I'm gonna raise my hand on that one too. Was a big thing because we don't want to get it wrong, so we do nothing. And when we do nothing, we are walking in obedience, and God wants to trust us. And so He's asking you today, make that faithful step. Do the thing that He has told you to do that you have been putting off, hoping to get it perfect. And the scripture that popped into my head was that is the farmer when he looks at the weather. If he keeps looking at the weather, he'll never plant. If he's also watching the weather, he's never going to harvest. And so if we keep watching and looking for perfect timing and perfect this, we'll never do the things that we need to do. We'll never make that faithful step. And so it's about showing up, stepping out, doing it, and putting out there. Yeah, I talked last week about the boy showing up with the two fishes and five barley loaves. He showed up, and God was able to use it because he was faithful and was willing to give up the little that he has, and God was able to trust him. We don't know what happened to his story and what happened after that day, but I know that he'll never forget what his sacrifice was able to produce that day. And so when we willingly make the sacrifice and we do what we're supposed to do, even when times are difficult and we're like, I don't want to do this, I don't feel like it today, God says, can I trust you to push forward to do it? And I'm not saying do it when you're exhausted and your body is saying lay down. No, that's crazy work, as the kids say. No, I'm saying, but when we can push through, our fear, and we can push through and do what we know we're supposed to do. That's what I'm talking about. Don't, if you're tired and you are exhausted and you are burnt to a crisp, lay down, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you need to get that rest that you need, and God need to trust you with rest as well. So make sure that you're taking care of your temple and allowing yourself to be, built up in order for you to do the work. But if you're just putting it off because you're procrastinating, then no. So perfection can keep us frozen and obedience keep us growing. So what are some of the things? One of those hindrances, again, fear of failure, comparison. We get stuck. My stuff is not as good as her. We're looking over at somebody else's yard, and I shared this analogy before that we're looking at somebody else's yard and we're like, oh my God, their grass is so perfect. And then we realize they got astroturf down. You're doing the actual work, and they took a shortcut and they put astroturf down because they don't want to do the work of maintaining. And then you're looking and comparing your effort to what they did not do. And so again, comparison will keep you stuck because we're like, I want my stuff to be like theirs. That is not your race. Run your race, and your race will be perfect because it was designed by God for you and you alone. And so run your race, stay in your lane, and do the work that you're called to do. Overthinking. I talked about this a little bit, I think last week. We can get stuck in our head, and all the time we keep ruminating about how we want it to be and what should be done and what we didn't do and what we didn't say and what decisions we made in the past, and what we should have done, the woulda, shoulda, coulda. We get stuck there. You have to let go, forget the things that's behind, press on to what is ahead of you, and do the work, do the today, because you can't change tomorrow and the future is not promised to us. And so all we have is this present moment, this present time to do it. So get out of your head. And I said it to myself too, get out of your head, and do the now. And so, being working on myself in these areas that I share with you, and the things that I did, where I had to sit down and I've got my little notebook here, where I have to, break it out and write the stuff that's in my head, because if I don't, they'll just start running over and over again. And I'm like, okay, let's get them out of my head. Let's get them on paper, so that, and if I don't have a notebook, your phone, the notes app, I tell you all the time, use the note app on your phone. Get the thoughts out of your head. Use the voice recorder, dictate however you need to do it, to be able to get the thoughts out, so that you can focus in on what is important and doing right now. Feeling unqualified. Ooh, that's a big one, because we say, God doesn't call the qualify, he qualifies the call. But then when God calls us, we were like, I'm not, I can't talk. I'm not ready. I'm not this. I don't have the qualifications. I didn't go to school. I don't have this. I'm not from the right family. I'm this. I'm that. I'm too short. I'm too old. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. I'm too this. Per- stuck within those things. And that also goes back to that comparison again. And it keeps us stuck from not moving forward into doing what we know we're supposed to be doing. And we know we're supposed to be doing. But again, that's what, you know, life does. Enemy does that. He keeps you stuck. He doesn't want you moving forward, because he knows how dangerous you would be if you ever put off that old self, put off all the weights and the stuff that's holding you down, and you begin to step out into your purpose. Wow, how dangerous would you be to the kingdom of darkness? How dangerous would you be to a world right now that needs our light to shine? How dangerous would we be to that when we start shining and walking in the purpose for which we were called? And we begin to put that stuff off, and then we begin to encourage somebody else, and that person encourages somebody else, and we begin to start that spark that grows, and our light begin to shine as bright as the stars in the heaven. And we begin to, because we're walking in our purpose, and we're fulfilled, we're healed people. Not saying we're going to again be perfect, but we will be on the ones that can be trusted with the little, so that he can trust us with the more. And so, start before you feel ready. Again, we may never feel ready. I told you when I started this podcast, when I started writing, I didn't think I got blindsided with that. And where I am today, and I can look back and say, from that start, where I think I will never write a book, you know, to writing as many as I have today, and still writing. My daughter Katrina, she's an online business manager. She works with small women entrepreneurs, and basically in service-based industries, and some others. And she had one of her newsletter this week, and she was like, "What is that side thing that kind of gets you distracted, where you go down this rabbit hole where something sparks, whatever creativity or whatever in you?" And I said, my thing was, I see a book in every situation. I see a word, I'm like, "Ooh, that'll make a great book." And my mind starts going, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a book." And I start writing, and they're all the time, they're like, "No more books, no more books, stop writing." I can't help it. I am a writer. And so therefore, I always see and I write titles down. I get ideas, scriptures, things will just pop in. So it's either not, if it's not a book, it's a sermon, or it's a blog, it's a something is going to come out of it. I'm going to write something. It's going to come somewhere. And I look back years ago when I was in that place where I just like, I am not a writer. I don't write. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start. And now I can't stop. And it was like I always got a writing addiction, but it's a good one, because I'm using my gift to bless, and I know that I'm in my happy place when I'm putting words, down. I used to pen to paper, because that's how I used to write all my stuff down. I used to have notebooks of stuff that I'm getting transcribed right now, because I've got books written and notebooks and all the things all over the place, and trying to get those all So start where you are. You may think that, I'm not a writer, write poetry, start writing, putting words down and watch it flow. You even say, well, I don't know how to talk to people. Start practicing. The kids used to do line some dolls, like I did some teddy bears and line them up and start talking to them until you build your confidence up. And then, allow it and then start stepping out, doing little things, going live on Facebook for 5 minutes or whatever it is that allows you to come to that place where you're growing and you can see the difference. Begin to take those steps. Again, focus on faithfulness and not performance. You have an audience of one, and he's already pleased with you. And so he's just saying, look, all I need you to do is start performing, start doing the work. I'm just start stepping out, not perform, but start doing the work that I've called you to. Be faithful over the little so he can bless you with the more. And so release pressure to prove yourself. Again, you have an audience of one. Don't worry about what they always tell us in performance. Some with choirs and different things and done solos and whatever. And I would say don't focus on the audience or find one person that is smiling and focus on that person, and then to release the pressure by just focusing on that one person, or look out into, just focusing on the light or whatever it is, and then take that pressure off yourself, close your eyes and just do. And so to release that pressure to prove yourself to someone else, only person that we need to stand approval for, and that's God. And so don't allow the pressures of performance or perfection to keep you stuck. And so I just want to encourage you today. If that's you, if you're like me and you were stuck in that place where you feel like you had to, have everything perfect, so we got to get all our ducks in a row. Ducks don't have to be in a row. They can be squiggly. They don't have to be straight. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be like all dressed the same, because they're not. Everybody has their own uniqueness. I heard Stephen Furtick call say that God created His unique daughters, and so we are His unique daughters. We are His chosen ones. For my brothers out there, God also called you unique as well. He's called you to be unconventional. And so, what is the gift that He has placed in your hands that He wants you to release in the earth to bless somebody else, to make an impact on somebody's life? And I tell you over and over again, it doesn't have to be big. You just have to do what God has called you to do. Bring your 2 fishes and your 5 loaves. Bring your faithfulness. Bring your widow's mite, and give that. Whatever it is, those are the things that is celebrated. Not the grand giant things where we think we have to be on a large stage or whatever it is. No, start small and just be you, and do the things that you know that you are supposed to be doing. Right? And so, a challenge for this week: do one thing imperfectly but faithfully. What can you do with it that you've been putting off? And it's like, but it's just not right yet. It's not perfect yet. That thing, do it. Just start doing it. Put it out there, and share it with somebody else, because again, it's a little stuff. Don't despise the small beginnings wherever you are, whatever you were doing. Don't despise that moment, So even if it's imperfect, maybe as a child, and I don't know why this came to my mind, maybe when you were a child and maybe you had a drawing or something that you brought home or you did, and your parent was just like, oh, that's ugly, and you could have done better, or whatever it is, and maybe that has kept you stuck because of that wound. I pray that God heals you from that, and that you draw your stick figures with the big head, and God says that's beautiful, because do it imperfectly, because God loves it. He says that He rejoices over us with singing. And so maybe that's a wound that you've had that's got you stuck in perfectionism. You're trying to get it right because you never received, an applaud, or, you did a good job, as a child, and it's got you stuck. And I know for me, that was, I think that's one of the reasons why I was stuck trying to be perfect. Because even when I got A's, it's like when you get an A plus, and God forbid I got anything less than, oh my. And so sometimes it keeps us in that space. And so I want to celebrate you in your imperfection, and allow you to be free and be released from that bondage of perfectionism because somebody wounded you as a child. And so I speak healing and release to you, and so that the Lord will heal you in that broken space, and that you'll be free to walk out this journey, walk out your purpose, even imperfectly, but you will do it because now you recognize that somebody is applauding. God is applauding you. I'm applauding you. I'm saying, good job. It was beautiful. No matter what somebody else said to you, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to God, and it's going to be beautiful to the people that you are going to be impacting with the imperfection and that you have. So take that faithful step, imperfectly and all, and recognize that God celebrates you, and I do too. Right? And so for my writers, the journalers who like to write and journal stuff, I write a lot of notes and I do write, but I don't like to journal. So that's just me. So where has perfectionism delayed you? So where have you been delayed because of it? I want you to focus on that, even for the part of the challenge. Look at, where have you been delayed because you've been trying to get things perfect and release that. And so what would obedience look like in this season? So, and what am I afraid will happen if I simply begin? You know, what can happen if you just do it imperfectly? What's going to happen? You made the steps, and then you recognize that, yeah, it was imperfect, but it was good. And I share with you over and over again, the thing that set me free was watching, my friend do she went live on Facebook. She was sitting in her car and she was doing good, and then all of a sudden her phone dropped. And stuff was upside down, and she just kept right on talking. And people and she was still blessing, even though she was digging around trying to get her phone, and she was doing all this kind of, and it was still such a beautiful moment, you know. And then she was like, and she just kept right on moving. She didn't say, oh, whoops, I dropped my phone. We could see you dropped your phone because you're live. you know. She dropped her and she kept right on moving. It was imperfect. She was in her car, she had an inspiration, and she was like, I'm gonna go live. Phone fell. It was on the ground. We could see up on the steering wheel. We could up on the steering wheel. We could see all the things. She was trying to pick it up and still trying to keep talking, and imperfect. But did it bless us? It sure did. It helped release me to be able to do this, to say, I can do this imperfectly. And I hope it releases you too, to say it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. All right. All right. So God honors willing hearts, not polished ones. So this again, take that faithful step. And so next week, we're going to be talking about staying grounded while you're growing. So there is growth. There's going to be growth, and I'm believing for you that you're going to grow, that you're going to release, you're going to be doing stuff. Message me. I want to be able to see the work that you're doing, whether imperfect or not. I want to see you do it. Show me the imperfect, paintings and pictures and all the things that you want to do. Maybe you wanted to learn how to sew when somebody discouraged you, and you know, like me, I can't cut a straight line to save my life. I have made clothes and in the past, and I've done things, using a sewing machine and whatever, but to cut a straight line, and that's important when you're sewing. So just keep that in mind. I made some good things, but I haven't sewn in years, and I don't know if I will pick it back up again. But again, it was imperfect, but I did it, and you can too. So I want to thank you all for joining me for another episode of Empower to Live. And remember that God has given us everything that we need to live this life and to live godly. So you'll have a wonderful night, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.